Hello and welcome to Model Aviation Live, the second edition. We had our first show last month and we had Greg Gimlick with us and we had a great show and we're excited. I'm excited to have a second show with you. And firstly, before we start, I'll mention that last month I was in my home arcade and this month I'm in my home office. So you can see behind me some of the models that I fly. And we're going to be talking a bit this month in this version of the show this month about our upcoming build issue. So two things. I'm wearing a t-shirt, World War I t-shirt, because right now the Hoosier Dawn Patrol is going on here at the IAC in Muncie, Indiana. So I always enjoy going out and being a part of that. But the other thing I wanted to share with you, since it's right here in arm's reach, is this little airplane that I built, since we're going to talk about building. So this, I built this kind of based off of Ernst Dudet's scheme on his Fokker D7. So here's an example of what I was going for. And this is a Millennium RC Micro SSX that I built. And so I thought it was I wanted to show you that I do get to build stuff here and again. Sometimes it's for reviews, sometimes it's just for fun. And this was a small project that I really enjoy flying, and it's really easy to show you on the camera, because if I brought a giant scale airplane in here, I wouldn't be able to show you. So right now, I want to tell you that our September issue of Model Aviation is out. I was on AMA Air to promote that last Friday, and it was the 100th episode of AMA Air. And so just want to remind everyone that the September digital edition is out, and the print edition will be out next week. You could start receiving it as soon as Saturday and into next week. So, but the main focus of our discussion today is going to be on the October issue, which, as you know, is our build issue that we do every year. And along with that, we have a discount at the plan service that runs from September 15th through October 31st. So members can take advantage of 20% off. So beyond the aircraft that we have in the October issue that you could build, which we'll have two, and those will be free digital plans. But beyond that, if there's a certain plan that you're interested in through our plan service, you can get 20% off from September 15th through October 31st. And another exciting thing about that is we're launching a new plans website to make it much easier for you to purchase plans. And we're hoping to launch that on or about September 15th. So you'll want to just go to modelaircraft.org/plans to access our new site. And there'll be pictures and information on all of the kits. It'll be searchable. We're really excited to make it easier for you to purchase plans and look at plans. So that's something that we've been working on for the last few months. So since we're going to talk about building on this episode of Model Aviation Live, I have a special guest, and his name is Fitz Walker, and hopefully you're familiar with his name because he's written for Model Aviation. He's also on the RC Roundtable, one of three of the RC Roundtable. So let's bring Fitz on the show and talk a little to him.
Hello, hey, Jay. How you doing?
How are you?
All right. Welcome to my lair.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, it looks like you're calling in from a hobby shop.
My wife says the same thing. So your room looks like a hobby shop.
Well, there's nothing wrong with having the supplies you need on hand. It looks like you have a lot of plastic models in that room.
Yeah, this is actually my plastic model room. I have a small room like this for building plastic models and some light duty RC stuff. And I actually have a garage that functions as my workshop for RC model stuff. But since I live in Houston, Texas, and my garage is not quite insulated yet, it's just way, way too hot to do anything right now in the middle of the day. So relegated to basking in the air conditioning in my much smaller but still quite filled hobby room. Yeah,
well, I mentioned that I'm in my home office, which is just obviously a bedroom in my house, but this is just off screen is my computer. I'm working with my laptop for today, but my main computer, it's a gaming computer, so I do my flight simulator on it. I do a lot of writing on it, and as you can see behind me, I've got a lot of airplanes. So you have another room that has your RC airplanes, is that right?
Yeah, it's my garage,
Okay.
So I have a garage that's basically, there's no room for cars because it's filled with RC models and workbenches and things like that. So that's what I normally use. And for most of the year, it's just fine. But for about 2 months out of the year, it gets really hot during the day. But it's very nice. I moved recently. My old house had a small, what was it, 10 by 12 ish, not even that big, maybe 8 by 12 shed that was my workshop. And I quickly outgrew that. So when I moved, my first thing is we need a nice big garage that will serve as my workshop, or at least temporarily until I can maybe build a bigger workshop, but I'm not sure if I'm going to do that. But that said, I didn't take the time to insulate it when I moved. I just moved in real quickly and realized later, like, I really should have insulated this thing. So I'm actually slowly experimenting with some different types of insulation on it. So, but at least by early next year, I should be much more comfortable any time of the year. So that is all my RC stuff. I only brought a couple of models for show and tell here, but this is not the RC room. This is in my house. But I have a love for plastic models and some other stuff related to that. So this is sort of another room that has a little cheap computer in it, and I can kind of get away. And when it's too hot, I can come in here, air conditioning, and I can do some airbrushing. In fact, I'm working on a model. I've got a spaceship here, a little fighter craft from an old Japanese anime show that I've been working on. You can see it's masked up and stuff. I've been tinkering with it the past couple of days. So I think I've actually mostly painted it. I need to, at this point, rip off the masking, throw some clear coats and decals, and do some detail painting on it. And of course, I got a wall of kits I've collected over the decades that one of these years I'll get to, maybe.
So I saw your shop, your garage where you do your building, because I watched you did a live feed of you building the Javelin, actually, which we'll get to here shortly. Mm-hmm. So do you hang models from the ceiling at all in your garage?
Yes, my garage is probably in danger of collapsing from all the models hung from the ceiling.
Okay.
So yes, I try to use as much space as I can. And so most of the models, I have a combination of hanging from the ceiling, and I have some wall racks. So if I can easily take the wings off, I'll hang it on the wall racks. And some of the other ones that are one piece, for the most part, I'll hang from the ceiling. Yeah, kind of like the wall racks you have.
Yeah.
And I also hang some from the ceiling in various fashions. I'll either go and bend some rod. You can go to like the Home Depot store and buy, what is it, 1/8 inch or 3/32, some large metal rods, and you can really kind of bend them contort them into different shapes. And I also found recently some sort of J hooks at the Home Depot type stores that I've also started using for some planes. Even if I can take the wing off, I found that I can take 2 of these J hooks. My workshop has open rafters on the ceiling. It doesn't have a sheetrock ceiling, so I can screw these little J hooks to the rafters and hang stuff up as well, like a fuselage and a wing or some odd shaped plane or something like that. So I've been trying to find new and creative ways of organizing and hanging up my aircraft as I, collect them.
Well, in the room I'm in, I mean, it's off camera, but I actually have 3 airplanes hanging up, and I used drywall anchors that are rated at 25 pounds, and I've had faith in them because right above me, literally, is a 1/6 scale Balsa USA Sopwith pup. So if it falls, it's literally going to fall right on my head, right there. And
you have a lot of faith, huh?
Yeah, and then over in the corner over here, that way, I have a Pitts. Biplane. I love biplanes. So I have a Pitts in that corner. And then in the other corner, I have a Stearman biplane. So biplanes, for me, they're my favorite. My favorite airplane is a biplane. So to try to, save room, I've got some hanging up. And then I've got racks behind me. The one you can see better is the Dubrow rack. I think they called it the fuselage and wing rack that I used. I just took some 2x4s and mounted it to it so it's freestanding. And then next to it over here, I have a PVC rack that I made myself, obviously out of PVC. So on the PVC rack, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 airplanes, and I think on the Dubrow rack I've got 6. So it really helps to keep a lot of airplanes in a small space.
Yeah, I've been known to scour the forums and such looking for ideas on aircraft storage, and so
yeah,
like some neat ideas.
One of our members suggested that we do a feature in the magazine every month showing someone's build space or shop, or like do a feature every month and show where people build their airplanes and store their airplanes. So that's something I've been considering. I just wonder, would a lot of people contribute to that? Would we have like a dozen people and then there's no more article submissions? So I don't know if that would be something that everyone would like to see. But if you would like to see that, if that does sound good, please leave a comment so that I can see if that's something that we should put in the magazine. What do you think, Fitz? Do you think people would like that? Do you think we get a lot of people sending in pictures?
I think so. I think it's worth a try, at least maybe for your builders issue you do every year.
Right.
That would kind of feature, that would coalesce or gel real well with the theme of the magazine to show workshops. And there you wouldn't worry about running out anytime soon. You could show, say, a couple of different workshops instead of having it every month.
Right.
Idea.
So Greg Gimlick, who was my guest last month, said lots of cool trailers around people have done too. So we don't even limit it to their building shop. It could be their trailer if they have it all set up.
Oh, okay. For some reason, I think a movie trailer, but yeah, yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's one thing I would like to have it at some point as well, is a trailer. A small trailer. I put my car's fairly small, but I did put a hook on it, and I used a trailer once or twice. I just rented one at U-Haul to go to a fly-in, and it was really nice. It was so convenient to have a large, mini vehicle behind yours to throw airplanes in and stuff. And in fact, I remember one time I used a trailer. And normally I pitch a tent. It was a fly-in that I usually stay at for several days. But with the trailer, all my airplanes were in a trailer. I ended up just sleeping in the car. I have a wagon, a little mini wagon. So I would just fold the seats down and put the sleeping bag in the car. And that was really nice. It was secluded from outside. I could crack the windows open. I had USB electricity. It was really nice. And that was all because I had a trailer I could offload everything into that. So I'm an advocate for trailers after experiencing just a taste of one.
Absolutely. You can also obviously transport bigger airplanes if you have a trailer. That's the problem I run into. I use my pickup truck to transport my airplanes, and it has a tonneau cover. And so I'm limited, in wingspan, or I even ran into a problem with a biplane that on its landing gear, it was about 2 inches too high for my tonneau cover to shut. So I actually used some PVC pipe, and then I put that inside swim noodle, and I use a bungee cord. And so I that way it keeps the back of the tonneau cover up for about 4 inches, but I can use a bungee cord to the bumper so that it can't open when I drive. Now, I must say that I only live literally 2 miles from AMA, and it's just, a small street. I don't have to go on the interstate or anything like that. But that allowed me to transport it because I really didn't want to have to take the wings off. I really didn't want to have to take the landing gear off. So, it was the clearance was so close that just by doing that and giving myself just 4 extra inches was allowing me to be able to get the biplane in there. And that's the Kike, his biplane that I did from Flex Innovations. I did a review on previously, and I love flying it. And but I, as much as I love biplanes, I like leaving the wings on if it's possible, instead of having to break them down and put them back together. I mean, depending on the size, you might have to do that, but if possible, I like to keep them together.
Yeah, especially World War I stuff, where it's got all the guide wires and struts and things like that. Yeah.
I see Rusty Kennedy has joined us. Thanks for joining us, Rusty. He says he has a 24 by 24 heated and air conditioned and insulated shop. Now that's a nice shop.
See, now that's the problem with having shop pictures. You get so jealous of these people that have these huge workshops to work in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think 24 by 24 is bigger than my first apartment.
Right. Well, like we talked about, storage becomes an issue too. If you build a lot of airplanes or fly a lot of airplanes. So like you mentioned you have 2 rooms. I do as well. I mean, this is just a place to store some of my airplanes. And I have another room where I, can work on them and build them. And I have all my radios and my supplies. And so, yeah, it definitely multiplies.
Yeah. One of the things I miss is I actually grew up in the Northeast, and we all had basements. And that's your built-in workshop in every house. But here in the South, especially here in the Houston area, there's no such thing as a basement. They don't exist. The soil is just not good for that kind of stuff. So you've got to either repurpose your garage or build a separate workshop and that kind of stuff. And if you live too close to the city limits, it's real hard to get real estate with a large backyard for that kind of stuff. You got to kind of move out to the country. So people that have these huge workshops, I have to admit, I'm really envious that she can have such a nice setup
Yeah.
like that.
I don't have a basement here in Muncie, Indiana. I mean, there are houses with basements, but unfortunately, I don't have one. If I did, I tell everybody that would be the answer, because I could put all my models and aircraft down there. But I'm also afraid if I had the space, I would fill it. At least being confined with what I have, it forces me to, if I build new models or review new models, then some of the other stuff has to go. It keeps me from just keeping everything. So in some ways, maybe that's a good thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. He's got a self-limiter.
Yeah. So Mark Landerman from Old School Model Works just chimed in. Basements are great. Cooler temps too. I've actually been in Mark's basement. Mark has a really great basement in Ohio, and he has a pool table in there. I mean, how great is that? So
nice.
And yeah. So Mark, I've flown with him many times, and Mark was. I hope he doesn't mind me sharing this, but kind of a side note, Mark was really big into Halloween, and he would decorate his house and his yard, and he would actually make his own props. Like things would jump out or sit up, and he would literally scare all the kids, and he would have like a line around his block of people waiting to go through his haunted house.
Oh, nice.
He did it like every year. And I tell you, there's videos, maybe he'll chime in, because he's obviously, commenting, maybe he'll chime in with a link. There's some YouTube videos of him scaring people in his garage with these things that he's made. And they're incredible. I mean, it's almost like something you'd see at a professional haunted house, like things jumping off the wall. And it's really cool what he's done. So, well, we're here at Fitz to talk about building. And so let's touch on a few things going back before we lead up to the October issue. So firstly, for those that may not be familiar with you, you were featured in I Am the AMA and Model Aviation. And that was in what issue was that? That was March. In the March issue, March 2020. And so you started with Control Line, correct?
Yes, I did. And first of all, it was a great honor for me to be on the IMAMA. I was very honored that you asked me to interview me and give me those questions. As somebody who, grew up as a kid reading AMA magazines and that kind of stuff, I never thought I'd be in a situation where I myself would be asked to be on one of those. So thanks a lot for that. And that was a great honor. But you're right. I did start, it was sort of a hybrid. I started obviously with plastic models, but as far as model aviation, as far as the flying kind, it was the earliest memories I have is of Control Line, where I had a stepfather who did model aviation when he was a kid. He did free flight, and he didn't do RC, but he did a lot of free flight and some Control Line. And me being I was maybe 8 years old or something like that at the time. I remember it was at least one of the Cox PT-19s. The yellow and blue ones that were held together with rubber bands and wishful thinking. And we had a school basically in our backyard, a schoolyard. It was like we lived in some condominiums that was right behind a school. So it was just a short walk to a schoolyard. And I remember him starting up the engine and we were flying. I never flew by myself that I can recall, but he would help me. He'd kind of hold my hands and stuff as we went around the ring a few times. And I remember my mother trying it once and she just beat the crap out of the plane. But at least you could give her kudos for giving it a try. And that really got me interested. Unfortunately, they got divorced just a few years later. So he was more or less out of my life at that point, but I never forgot that. And I kept some of the planes. And so I would tinker with them. And when I was about middle school age, I started getting into free flight aircraft. Since it was real hard for me to do Control Line by myself, I still had a few, and I had a plastic one, I think made by Testers, that I would fly in one of the cul-de-sacs in my neighborhood. Me and some friends in the neighborhood, we'd fly the thing around, and we flew that quite a bit till I think I eventually broke it where it couldn't fly anymore. But I still had fun with it. So Control Line was still a good part of my life up until almost high school. But I really got into, I don't know why, but I really liked building these old, what were those? The Gillows free flight aircraft, the rubber band powered stuff. So I just would, save my lunch money, save whatever chore money I had, and I'd bicycle down to the local hobby store, and I'd pick them up. They weren't very expensive, $5 maybe, or something like that. And I was actually, they flew terrible. I barely knew what I was doing. I could build a structure, but I wasn't very good at covering. I didn't use dope on the tissue, so I just kind of glued the covering on. And now I know that's probably why they flew so bad. The tissue was very porous without dope and that kind of stuff on it. But I didn't care. I just thought I see a neat looking plane. I said, that's kind of neat. Let me put it together. And I build it and fly it out my front yard. It'd go up like a rock and come down like a brick. And I had a lot of fun, and that held me over until I was in high school, and I had a job that I could buy my own RC stuff, and that's how I got into RC. I always wanted RC. I just couldn't afford it until I was old enough to buy it on my own finances.
I also started with the Cox PT-19, and it was great because it had rubber bands, and if you crashed it, generally speaking, it would pop apart. And interestingly enough, I actually have one, and not in this room, but in the other room. It's not my original. I don't know what happened to it, but a few years ago at AMA Expo, I bought one just for nostalgia because I wanted to have one. But I think a lot of people learned on Cox controlling airplanes, be it the PT-19 or one of the other models that they had. So that's really interesting to hear that. Another thing that I thought was really interesting in your responses that you gave in I Am the AMA is that you said you started a mail order helicopter business. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, that was some years ago. I was one of those things that sort of fell into. I saw there was an opportunity. It was shortly after I had graduated university, and I was working kind of my first job out on my own, kind of for the first time in my life. And I had really started to get back into RC pretty heavily. I was getting into electric RC stuff. I kind of saw that electrics were kind of getting popular. This is, say, the late 90s. And I had tinkered with electrics for a long time, actually, since when I was a teenager in the 80s, but with very limited success. But I started seeing like Speed 400 stuff and that kind of things popping up. So I started to get really into electrics and really fascinated by getting them flying and working. And I always liked helicopters. I had been tinkering with helicopters. I had an old shuttle that I would fly a few times. I had something called Sport 500, which was it was a helicopter in theory, but I had a lot of problems with it. It flew okay when parts weren't flying off of it. So I'd tinker with some success. I could hover and stuff. But when I saw electric helicopters, that really got my interest. So electric helicopter sounds really neat. But it was something that really wasn't that popular here in the States. I saw magazines that was kind of popular in Europe, some stuff in Asia. And at the time, Hobby Lobby had something called the Echo 8. And that was a really neat helicopter. It was small, but it was probably the first real electric helicopter that could fly very well. It was actually aerobatic. It had minimal design, which was both a benefit and a curse of it. And I really liked it, and I started getting into it, but getting parts was hard, even though I think Hobby Lobby was importing them. It was still very difficult to get parts for. And so I did some investigation, and I found out you could buy the parts directly from the manufacturer. And so I started thinking like, so I wonder if I could start importing some of these parts for this thing and help out people, because people were complaining and that kind of stuff. And I can make a little bit of profit to help pay for some school debt and that kind of stuff. So it would be a kind of a dual purpose thing. I could feed the hobby and also provide a service and that kind of stuff. And so I actually started importing parts and full helicopters eventually for the Echo 8. And that started doing pretty well. And so I was looking for other stuff, and I ended up branching out. I had, by the time I was up and running really well for a couple of years, I had the Mikado line, the Logo series. I had the Minicopter, which were the Joker series. And I had also a lot of cottage industry stuff, people who didn't make helicopters, that made upgrades. So for the Echo 8, for Mikado, little cottage guys, people that made machine parts for the little, they had a really small indoor helicopter. Those are starting to become popular, like the MS Composite Hornet and what was the other one they had? They had another little one. I forgot what it was called. So a company out of, I think, the Czech Republic. I was importing those as well. And those are real popular for a while. So I had lots of different little upgrade parts. Brushless motors were coming in. So I was specialized in types of brushless motors specifically for these helicopters. A lot of them came with brush motors. And when brushless motors came out, that was all the rave and a lot better power. So it sort of just kind of snowballed from there. I actually ended up designing some of my own parts for upgrade, especially for the Echo 8. I found a machinist who was familiar with the hobby industry, and we could talk. And so I knew how to draw stuff up in CAD. So I draw something up and say, hey, can you make this and anodize it? And he goes, yeah, sure. It costs X for 100 units or something like that. So we had a pretty good relationship. And so it was a lot of fun. It helped feed the hobby. I ended up with a bunch of helicopters, but I also used them to experiment. I would experiment with different motors and battery combinations, especially when lithium batteries came out. That was another big deal. And in the early days, I actually flew a helicopter for 20 minutes or so on lithium packs that I built myself, the old CoCam battery packs. So it got to the point where it was getting to be like work. I actually, I'd come home from work and I'd spend another 4 or 5 hours in the garage packing orders and stuff. And eventually my mother came out and she'd help me for a while, answer phone calls, answer emails, and that kind of stuff. And so it was almost to the point where where am I going to go with it? This is really becoming a thing. And what happened is somebody, one of my customers says, hey, I own a machinist company and I just sold the company and I'm looking for something to do. You interested in selling your business?
Oh,
it's like, hey, that's really good timing.
wow.
Yeah, I ended up selling it to one of my former customers. He liked how I did business, and I consulted with him for a while. And then I kind of washed my hands of it. And in hindsight, it was probably a good thing. The hobby was about to change very drastically in another few years with the drones and stuff. And so I would have either had to jump on a drone bandwagon and I know helicopters themselves have kind of really changed quite a bit. The industry has changed a lot. Some of the big names are gone, and there's new companies, and so it's really hard to keep track of. So it's nice just being a bystander and flying helicopters occasionally from as I see, but not being in the business. So that was a quick 50-cent tour of my previous helicopter business.
That's really interesting.
I guess I should call it the name. The name was called FX Aero Models.
Oh, okay.
Which was a terrible name. I don't know why I came up with that, but I didn't want to limit myself to just helicopters, but that's what it was called. And so every once in a while I meet former customers or, that kind of stuff. Or I was cleaning up and I found some old invoices and stuff from the business. Like, I still have this stuff.
Right. Well, I want to try to answer a quick question. We've got a gentleman by the name of Kenyatta who mentions that he's a retired Army veteran. So firstly, thank you for your service. I'm also a Army veteran, and he said he has the time and money to get into the hobby, but it's difficult to find pilots to help him get in the air. So a couple of comments about that. If you haven't already, on the AMA website, we have a club finder, and you can put in like your zip code or the area that you're looking for, and it'll let you know about AMA clubs in your area. That may be one way that you can get some assistance. Also, we've partnered to help Horizon Hobby with an intro training program, so you can look into that as well. And if you'd like to reach out to me, I'd be happy to try to help you. You can email me. My email address is in the magazine. It's just jays@modelaircraft.org. Happy to have you in the hobby, and hopefully we can get you the resources to have your successful first flight. And trust me, once you get your first successful flight, it just grows from there, right, Fitz?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, Kenyatta, don't give up. This is a great hobby. You won't be sorry that you joined it. Don't give up. Look at the links. Find a local club in your area. Also, if there's a local hobby shop in your area, you can always go there and ask them about local clubs in the area as well. And keep at it. It's a great hobby, and we'd love to have you.
Absolutely. So from there, we talked a little bit about your I Am the AMA, but you also wrote some articles around building this year, and one of them, firstly, I think the first one that ran was you did the Mustache Model Works Beaver, correct?
Yes, yes.
And that was giant scale.
That was big. That's a 90-something inch wingspan plane.
Yes.
It was probably the biggest non-glider that I've ever built. It's a very well engineered kit, though it has a lot of pieces. You open a box and it was like, wow, somebody spent some time designing this thing. But it came out fantastic. It's probably the nicest looking plane, one of the nicest planes I've ever built. It's very well engineered, a big gas engine. Like I said, I'm mainly an electric guy, but it was neat to kind of play around with a gas engine on this, a 20cc RCGF engine I put in there. The covering came out really well. I don't know if I ever told you, Jay, after this article came out, I actually got an email from a gentleman who lived in Alaska and flew in the same plane that I modeled it after.
Oh, wow.
He said he worked with the Civil Air Patrol, and he had a bunch of hours in that exact plane. And he ended up sending me some other pictures from the Civil Air Patrol at the time. And so he said he really liked seeing that, and it was really surprising that somebody had modeled it after. Because I kind of went around saying, what do I want to paint this like? I had a time crunch, so I didn't want to get anything too complicated. At one point, I was thinking of doing Harrison Ford's Beaver. He owns the Beaver, but I didn't really like his paint job all that much. It was okay, but I thought it was maybe a little bit more complicated or just not my style. But when I saw the Civil Air Patrol, I said, well, that's actually kind of nice. It's easy to do, but it's kind of some nice striking colors and easy to see in the air. So I just took some pictures. I contacted Cali Graphics to make me some vinyl graphics. And I also made my own graphics and some parts of it. And there you have it. It turned out came out really nice. It's a nice flying plane, and I still have it. I bring it out to the high wing fly-ins and that kind of stuff. I think at some point they were supposed to design some floats for it. I don't know if he's done that yet or not, but there is provisions for floats for it as well.
And that, if anyone's interested in that article, that was in the February 2020 issue of Model Aviation, Fitz's review, and he also did a flight video. And let's talk real quick about your flight videos, Fitz. I find it very interesting that you talk us through it. You talk while you're flying, and you give us, I'm trying this, or I'm inputting this, or it rolls better one direction than the other. It's great. I mean, you're providing the viewers a little something beyond what maybe they might pick up on the video. Do you ever find it challenging to talk through, the flight maneuvers and what you're experiencing while you're flying?
For the most part, no. There is a couple of times where I might be a little bit quiet. I'm trying to sort something out. If it's doing something weird, I might concentrate on, what's going on here. If I'm really involved in the trims, or if I notice something that's very peculiar, I might pause for a second to just to double check that I felt or saw what I thought I saw. But for the most part, no, it kind of helps me. I do it for two reasons. Obviously, for people watching to say, hey, this is what I'm going to do. This is how it reacts. Kind of give a running review. But it also helps to tell my cameraman what I'm about to do. Because sometimes, if I'm flying straight and level and I pull vertical real quick, it'll go out of shot. The cameraman was like, I wasn't expecting you to do that. So, it helps the cameraman keep track on the aircraft, but it also gives me some filler to say, as you're flying, it's not just somebody flying, some guy just watching an airplane fly. I'm kind of interacting with the audience and say, hey, this is how I feel about it. I'm going to try this. Let's see what this does, and you can see how it reacts and sort of kind of be almost like you're standing next to me and I'm talking to you. Yeah,
it's kind of like that. Really is. So from that article, the next one that you did that obviously has a lot to do with building, you did one around laser cutting in the July 2020 issue. Can you give everyone who either hasn't seen it or, maybe it's been a while since they read it, can you give a little overview of that article?
Yeah, that was something that I have been meaning to do for some time. That I always was interested in laser cutting. In fact, at one point, I was going to buy my own laser cutter. It became really close, especially that the prices have come down quite a bit. I wanted to have my own because I like scratch building, and this makes it a lot easier to do a lot of scratch building. But I also, how do you say it? I'm involved in the maker community. And if you're not familiar with the maker community, these are basically like hacker spaces, maker spaces, people who like to build stuff, 3D printing, robotics. It's a nonprofit organizations that are all around the world, really. And they used to have, into the lockdown, of course, large conventions called maker fairs. And all the major cities have them. We had some in here in Houston and stuff like that. And so we actually have a local maker space, which is sort of a club. You pay monthly dues, but you have all kinds of machinery that's open to use. So our maker space has a lathe. They have a desktop CNC, a couple of different CNC machines, milling machines, we have seminars, lots of neat things that we do. We get together, kind of brainstorm, and somebody there knows something about something. They're experts in all kinds of stuff, whether it's programming Arduinos or building costumes for cosplays, that kind of stuff. But they got a couple of years ago a laser cutter. Of course, I was always bugging them. So we need a laser cutter. We need a laser cutter. So they actually got a grant. And we bought a nice big 50 watt laser cutter. Yeah, there's a picture of it here. And this, as soon as we got this, I was on it to learn how to use it. And it's been a really nice machine. There's some nuances to using it, and you need proper venting and water cooling and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of cumbersome if you want to have one at home. But the space, we have a building that we rent out that we can have all that stuff. So you can see this. What you're looking at is, I can't remember the name of it. It's one of those Chinese brands. I think there's similar models. This is a CO2 carbon dioxide laser. I believe it's a 50 or 60 watt. And there's a laptop you can see just barely on the left. And what you do is you drop a vectorized drawing, and then you just plug it in, and it's connected via USB. And there's a plate. You can see there's a piece of plywood in the middle. That's actually one of the pieces I was cutting out. And I'll show you what that was for in a minute. So there's basically an XY axis on the bed, almost like a plotter. Basically, that's what it is. It's a plotter with a laser end on it. With some venting and some other safety features to it. And so I've been doing this for a while. And so when you had a upcoming issue regarding building, I thought, well, I had some pictures and stuff from when I was experimenting with laser cutting. I could write up a quick article and give people an idea of what it takes to laser cut parts. And interesting enough, Jay, that article has the most response of any of my articles I've ever submitted to Model Aviation. I've gotten quite a few emails. I even ended up talking to somebody over the phone about laser cutting and stuff. So I don't know if you got a response, but that's triggered a lot of interest in people. In what
I do get responses, and I think I got a few responses on that article. I find that building is very interesting to people, either because they've been doing it for years, or maybe they're new to it. When I took over as the editor of the magazine, I instituted the October build issue because I thought the timing was right, because that comes out in mid to late September, and people are starting to think about the quote unquote winter build season, and get a lot of good comments about that issue and the articles. And I made all the plans free. Digitally. So we offer all the plans of Model Aviation are free digitally. Obviously, if you want printed copies, you can get those from our plan service, and for a small fee, and we're happy to send those out to you. So that's worked really, really well. And so I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that you got a lot of comments on that. And
it was pretty amazing. Just to elaborate on what I was printing. What you saw there was the beginnings of this plane. This is the old QT. It used to be kitted by Airtronics. It might have been even in the old RCM magazine at some point. And I always wanted one, but I never had one. And when I came across some plans that I used to vectorize and create the files to laser cut. So this is really the first kit I ever laser cut. And it was a great experience. I learned a lot. It came out extremely well, and that was kind of the genesis of the article. And this has been a great flying airplane. It's got I went old school. It's got a Cox 049 on it with a throttle sleeve. I'd never had a Cox with a throttle sleeve, so this was really a nice opportunity to try a throttle 049, or I think this is 051. Actually, it's 051. Close enough. And this has been it's despite being a trainer, basically these are supposed to be trainer, this has been an extremely fun plane to fly. It's actually quite aerobatic. And I was at a fly-in recently that was specializing in old planes that were at least 20 years old and older. And I was flying around and people were admiring it. And so I actually let a couple other people fly it. And they all had smiles on their faces when they were flying this thing around. You wouldn't have thought that such a little plane like this would be so much fun to fly, but it's easy to fly, but it's actually quite responsive. And I had a great time with it. So what's interesting with this is with laser cutting, not only did I cut out all the ribs and the normal formers and stuff, I actually drew up the sides for the fuselage sides and parts of the tail. So I actually ended up laser cutting more than the original kit had die cut. And so the laser cutting allowed me the flexibility to do that kind of stuff because it was so easy just to draw a few extra parts and that kind of stuff. So if you ever were curious about laser cutting, give it a shot. That issue, was it last October? Or no, that was this upcoming issue. No, what issue was it?
It was in July.
July. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
So you might have it on your website, maybe as well. I'm not sure.
Well, yeah, the print subscriber should already have the print issue, and if you're a digital subscriber, you can access it anytime.
Okay.
So maybe that was a good segue to talk about the upcoming October issue. So we're working on that right now. We're almost done with it. To finish all the articles and do the layouts and whatnot. And in that issue, and with every October issue, I've made it a point where we only have kids. There's no reviews of ARFs. There's no reviews of Ready to Fly. Basically, I want the entire October issue to focus on building. And so how can I do that if if I have ARFs or Ready to Flies in there? And certainly they have their place. I mean, nothing against them, but it's just neat to have one issue every year that only has kits. So in the October issue, we have 2 kit reviews, one of which you did, called the Javelin, and the other one was done by a close friend of yours who's part of the Roundtable, the RC Roundtable, none other than Terry Dunn, and he does the Retro RC 1951 Flying Wing. There it is. Hey, Terry.
Great picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my old buddy, Terry Dunn, and he's one of the 3 co-hosts on the RC Roundtable. It's a podcast that I do with him and Lee Ray. And go to rcroundtable.com. And Terry has been talking about building that plane, and he's flown it a few times. And so it's been a great experience for him to put together. I think at one point he was asking the audience for color ideas for the color scheme.
Right.
So he has since flown it successfully. So he finds it a really interesting plane. He said it was really neat, and he likes odd stuff like that anyway. So
yeah, I thought of him, because like he did that plane called the Parallax for us. That was really
yes, yeah,
yeah. I thought of him, and he was very excited about it. In the comments section, we have a link to your laser cutting article. So if people don't have the magazine readily available or the digital, they can just go to the link, and it's on our website. So, okay, October issue. It's all about building. You built the Javelin, which is right behind you.
Yeah, I have the fuselage right behind me. I didn't get the wings, but I can bring it up. So, hopefully people can see it. This is the old school Model Works Javelin. This is used, as Jalen mentioned, this will be in the upcoming issue. This is a better angle. So, I've flown this quite a bit. This is a very nice flying plane. It's very well engineered, balsa and ply. People have seen it at the field. They remarked at how nice looking plane it is. It came out. I did some calculations. It's got a surprisingly light wing loading, so that it flies a pretty good speed, but you can really also slow it down, fly it almost like a trainer. So this would be more like an advanced trainer. It's got a symmetrical wing. It's sort of a high wing pattern plane almost. Sorry if you can't hear me very well. Yeah, there's a picture of it at the flying field. So this is, it runs off a 4-cell. I think I had a 4,500 milliamp hour battery pack. There's lots of room inside for various sizes of battery packs as well. So you can shift things around. You can go to a lighter pack or heavier pack. It's just your standard 4-channel aircraft. It's using a new series of motors called the Badass series. So wasn't familiar with them, but the motors is provided quite a bit of power. It's run really nicely.
Yeah, that came from Innovative Designs.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, Innovative Designs. It's a new series, a Badass motor. You can, there you go. and controller. It's got a programmable controller. It's got a nice hatch that makes easily accessible the inside. You can see there's a lot of space. There's not a whole lot of stuff in there. I got a couple of small servos in the back, and you've got your plate in the front, and there's a receiver on the side, and that's about it. So I brought it over to my club meeting of the month and showed it off, and somebody was asking, well, can they fly that on a 3-cell? And I said, this probably fly just fine on a 3-cell. It's got enough room, as long as the battery pack's big enough for balance, the power wouldn't be an issue, even with the motor I'm using on 4 cells. So it's got a range of power options on it. Building a kit is really a non-issue. I think I only had one minor hiccup that was kind of my own fault, where I wasn't paying enough attention to the instructions. So I think I mentioned that in the article, but I was able to recover from that. It's just surprisingly aerobatic. And I don't know, what else can I say? It was a nice build. Didn't take very long. The graphics, Kali Graphics has a preset that you can order from her that has a Javelin logo and the arrow livery and some stuff on the wings and the chevrons on the tail and whatnot. You just tell her what color you want, and the windows too. So you just tell her what color you want, or if you want mixed colors or whatever, and you can order it and stick it right on. It's got a modular motor box. I painted it so you can't really see it very well. And the kit came with most of the stuff. I think I just had to buy the wheels, and that was pretty much it. And I think a couple of control rods. So I think Mark is on. Yeah, I see him talking in the channel. Mark, you did a very good job in designing this. It's a fantastic flying plane with great looks. So I don't know much else I can say, but if you're interested in building some kits, look up the Old School Model Works. He's got quite a variety of really interesting designs. You mentioned Terry. Terry built another one of his designs. I forgot what it was called, but another a shoulder wing aircraft that he had built. So they got all kinds of neat stuff. You got a little Delta Wing high-speed thing that looked kind of neat.
Yeah. So, in regards to the Javelin, you also did a video that we'll also be sharing, where as we talked about, you talk through as you're flying it. But you also did a live build of this airplane on YouTube. Can you talk to us about that?
Oh, yes. I think I did a couple different ones on my live video. I have my own YouTube channel called Hobby View, and I've been experimenting with live shows. And I thought, people probably don't see a whole lot of stuff of me seeing models being built. So I did one live session on just starting to build the wing. I showed them how I put the ribs together, how my thought processes of aligning everything, the glues I use, and that kind of stuff. And so I spent a couple of hours just starting on assembly of the wing. And then I did a second live show of when I started covering, because I was using a different technique that I wanted to experiment with when covering the fuselage, because I have a split color, but there's open structures on here. So I want to experiment with joining the covering 2 colors first before applying it to the model, versus applying one shade to the model, then the other color to the model. So I went through my process of measuring and aligning everything, and I did a live stream on that. And people seemed to think that was really, really interesting and informative, and it came out really well. I'm really happy with how the model came out. And so we hopefully I'll do some more live shows in the future. Like I said, it's been too hot to do much at the moment, but as the weather cools down, I think I'm going to do some more live shows. And I'm always open to topics and subjects as well. So,
well, I think it really turned out great. And when I saw it, I told you that it kind of reminded me of the TARDIS from Doctor Who. I guess it was just the blue.
Yeah.
And so we're gonna talk about that just for a quick moment, because you talked about the makerspace, and I have to tell you, we have a makerspace here in Muncie, and I've also gone to maker fairs. I actually went to the one in New York, which is one of the largest in the U.S.
Yeah.
And I've been to the one at the Henry Ford, and I think it's really cool. I'm a subscriber of Make Magazine, and I think the maker movement is really cool. And so, as far as being a maker, you built the robot dog from Doctor Who, known as K9, and I believe he's hiding right behind you. So, can you kind of give us a quick overview of that? And it does apply because he is RC. So let's say that.
Yes, it's, you can see him here. Excuse me if my audio gets a little low, but here is K9 from the old Doctor Who series. I'm an old Doctor Who fan, and Here, let me move the mic. Yeah, nice to have it. So this is K9. If you're familiar with the old Doctor Who from back in the 70s and 80s, he had a artificial intelligent robot called K9. It was a dog. It worked. It ran around. It could talk and speak and interact and stuff like that. And I always thought it would be a neat project. So I actually built one. He's made out of styrene, plastic. Oh, did we lose the camera?
I think we lost your camera there for a minute. You might have.
Crud. Yeah, the connection has been kind of wonky. Let me plug it in, reset it.
Well, while you're resetting that, I'm going to share a really quick story, and then we'll get back to you, Fitz. So, I'm also a Doctor Who fan, and last month, people who watched the show saw a quick picture of an RC Dalek at full scale. But here's another I'm going to share a really quick story. So, the first episode of Doctor Who I ever saw was with Tom Baker, the fourth Doctor. It was called The Deadly Assassin, and a few years later, a local PBS station had a guest from Doctor Who at the PBS station, because back when the original classic Doctor Who was on, they showed Doctor Who on PBS. And so they were doing a fundraiser to raise money to buy episodes of Doctor Who. And so I went to my local PBS station to meet the actor. His name's John Levine. And if you're a Doctor Who fan, he played Sergeant Benton during the third Doctor and the fourth Doctor's time. And what was interesting is they had kind of a wheel with all the episodes that they wanted to buy of Doctor Who. And as people pledged money, we would spin the wheel live on television, and they'd say, okay, we bought this episode. Okay, we bought that episode. So they asked me to be on TV. And so I was on, and I talked to John, and I spun the wheel, and guess where it stopped? On The Deadly Assassin. I mean, what's the first episode I ever watched Doctor Who, The Deadly Assassin, and the wheel stopped, and they said, okay, we bought The Deadly Assassin. So after the live airing was over, I asked if I could keep this little foam board that said Deadly Assassin, and then let me get it right in the camera. So then John Levine signed it for me. So just a quick side story while you're getting your camera up and running, but really cool that it worked out that way. So let's get back real quick to your K9.
Okay, let's hope the camera stays. So just real quick, as you mentioned before, he is radio controlled. I didn't bring a transmitter up, but he has. I use an Aurora, high-tech Aurora 9-channel radio, and I've used all 9 channels on him. So he has working ears. He's got a working probe that comes out. He's got a working gun in the front there. His tail actually will wiggle up and down and left and right. And of course, he drives around. He's got like a tank-like steering. You can use 2 motors in there. The head will move up and down on a servo, a linear servo. He's got, just like the show, he's got buttons and a couple of screens, and he's got the camera, and you can see the television on the side. And if you really want to get scary, here, hold on, let me turn around here. Hopefully the camera won't die on me. Open him up. He's got a control panel here, and it's a whole mess of wires in there. I'm kind of embarrassed because it's kind of a rat's nest. But he has, if you're familiar with electronics, he's got Arduinos inside. He's got, I think, 4 or 5 Arduinos. There's a Raspberry Pi. There's a bunch of servos I'm running out of length on there's a couple of servos for the tail, and a linear servo for the neck, and drive wires, a soundboard, because he talks just like the show does. So it's a lot of stuff that I just kept adding things. I come up with an idea. I was like, you know what? I wonder if I can make him do this. And I add a piece in that. So it's right now it's spaghetti wiring. One of my long-term goals is to clean this up and make it look a little nicer. But he does work. In fact, there's a little, one of the batteries is still in there.
There you go.
So I could probably plug him in. You know what? Maybe we'll plug him in real quick, see if he can at least make him talk. What wire goes where? Yeah, that's it.
How long did it take you to build this, Fitz?
Oh, I get that question a lot, and I can never answer it quite well because the body itself didn't take long. Maybe a couple of months worth of work, but then I added. Yeah, he's turning on. Then it had, almost a year's worth of other work. You can see the displays actually work. Can you see that?
Yeah, we can see that.
Yeah, see the. So I just plugged him in. He's got the light sequence, and these are driven by some Arduino. So we got a couple different patterns, little LCD screens. One of the buttons changes the pattern, which I can't remember. There we go. So I got a fast pattern, and I got a slow pattern. So I've got a separate remote that allows me to do different things. Let's see if it works. He's okay. So I haven't turned him on in a while, and he's not talking.
all that excitement. We wanted to hear John Leeson, the voice of K9, and I guess we're not going to hear it. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. It's a cool project, and it is RC related. It may not be airplane related, but it is.
It kind of works.
There you go. So to pull things back to airplanes, it's almost time for us to wrap up. But since we talked a lot about building, one of the questions I wanted to ask you, Fitz, is what was the first airplane that you built from a kit?
That would be the Goldberg General Lady.
Oh, I have one in the other room. Yeah, that I built. Yeah,
that one. That I basically taught myself to fly on a General Lady. Sorry, microphone.
That's all right.
So I had started flying RC models, and I had gone through a couple of different planes. So I wanted something that I thought would be a lot easier to fly and to learn on. And so the General Ladies weren't always very cheap. So I picked one up, and I said, "Hey, maybe I can build one of these." And so I followed instructions. I put it together, and covered it. My first time covering an airplane, and it was adequate. It wasn't anything great, but it was enough that it flew. I flew it a lot, actually, and I started with just throwing it off of a small hill in a schoolyard, just to kind of get the feel of the controls. And when I was comfortable with that, then I put an 049 power pod on it and flew it as a powered glider with 049. And I got to the point where I was actually able to do aerobatics with it. I could fly around, do loops and rolls, until I did one roll too many and snapped the wing in half. At that point, I realized, hey, I kind of know how to fly, and I went back to some of my other planes and flew with that. But the General Lady, I always have a soft spot in my heart for the old classic General Lady.
Well, my first build from a kit was a Carl Goldberg model as well, but mine was called the Eagle 2.
Oh, yeah.
And I actually built the fuselage twice. And, probably people are going to think, well, that's because you must have crashed it. That's actually not why. I actually built the first fuselage, and my parents took me to the movies, and we came back, and my dog had used it as a chew toy.
Oh.
And it was really disheartening to come home and find that, it was destroyed. So I ended up building it a second time. But I think I built it better the second time, because, I'd had the experience of building it the first time. So, yeah, it's, it was the first of many, because building is a lot of fun. Again, there's obviously nothing wrong with ARFs and ready to flies. They have their place, and they help people get into our hobby that may not be comfortable building or have the time to build. But there's definitely something about taking either a box of laser cut wood, or even cutting it yourself and turning it into a flying aircraft. I mean, there's definitely a sense of accomplishment to that. And so excited to promote that with the October issue. And I want to share with everyone, we're going to kind of continue the theme of building in the October issue into the next episode of AMA Live, Model Aviation Live. We're going to carry the same topic into the next one. And I'm going to have two guests. One is going to be Mark Landerman from Old School Model Works. So we're going to talk about not just his newest airplane, the Javelin, but just all of his airplanes, and tips for builders, and kind of questions that he gets, and all kinds of knowledge that he has. And then I'm also going to bring on Mark Freeland from Retro RC, who is the company that built or produced the model that Terry built. So I think it's going to be great to get both of them on the show and talk to them about the inspiration for the models that they build, and again, tips and frequently asked questions and all that. And also mention that in the October issue, we have every month I've been putting in the common questions, trying to answer people's questions that come to different companies. And RTL fasteners is actually going to be featured in the October issue. So there's going to be some questions answered about RTL fasteners products. So I really appreciate you spending the time with us today, Fitz. It's always a pleasure to chat with you and work with you, and we look forward to continuing to work with you on articles and reviews. And I want to give you a minute. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up?
Just thanks a lot for the invite. It's been a lot of fun to talk to you and interact with the audience as well. I see a lot of comments that came up on the side, and hello to you all. I see a few people have said hello to me and that kind of stuff, and people recognize me from my YouTube page. So thanks all. I appreciate your comments and your patronage. And it's been a lot of fun. It was great talking to you, and I look forward to working with you in the future. Definitely.
Awesome. So it'll be the third Friday of next month, and please tune in Friday, September 18th for the next edition. We're excited to share a lot of information from both Marks. It might be confusing for me as the host since they're both Mark, but I'll be excited to have them both on the show. So thanks everyone for watching, everyone that tuned in live, and obviously if you haven't had the opportunity to watch it live, it'll be on YouTube as soon as this is over with. Thank you, Fitz, and I guess we'll see you soon.
All right, my pleasure.
All right, take care.